All right, so our second review of the day is going to be for the movie Sanctuary. So Sanctuary was a movie that people might remember. It was on Nick's best of list when we did the best of the
Yeah.
year so far, which you all can check it on YouTube, youtube.com. Just type in the afternoon tune, able to find the best of 2023 so far. And this was on Nick's list there. So I've been interested about it ever since he mentioned it. Now it is on Hulu, so everybody can check it out if you have Hulu. If that's one of the 80th streaming services that you have, you can go check it out there. And so this movie is about a guy named Hal. And he has a dominatrix. All right, very rich guy. He's in the midst of inheriting his father's hotels. He's incredibly wealthy, and he hires this dominatrix played by Margaret Qualley, who she is the daughter of Andy McDowell. So that's why she kind of maybe looks sort of familiar. She's got the same kind of, jawline, hair, kind of as Andy McDowell. So she looks sort of familiar there.
I didn't recognize that until I saw the hair of them two together. It was like, oh yeah.
Yeah. So which is very nice there. And she plays a woman named Rebecca, like I said, dominatrix, who, she kind of, comes in, creates a whole scenario for him. They all act it out, for his own, sexual pleasure and desires there. But things kind of take a turn in this, where he starts to question things, starts to question his relationship with her. What's her true motives here, and everything.
Yeah, it's like the whole impetus of this movie is he's about to become the CEO of his father's hotel company, and he's trying to break up with her because it's like, I'm a CEO. CEOs don't do this. They don't get dominated.
I mean, he must not know many CEOs because that's pretty much it's not the case with a lot of them, right? So it's very interesting to kind of see this movie for yourself and to see where things go, because it's one of those movies I don't think you exactly know where things are going to go, and it's exciting to kind of come in here, which we won't be spoiling or anything like that, because I think it's good if you kind of go in there as blind as possible and kind of see where things go. But I'm going to pass it around, get you guys' thoughts on it. Nick, what are your thoughts on Sanctuary? Since this was on your best of the year so far, you talked a little bit about it. Go into it a little bit.
Yeah, so for me, what makes this movie really special is that it is very much just really a bottle film with Christopher Abbott and Margaret Qualley. And it is all about just this constantly shifting power dynamic between the two of them. And Shaylia gives up a good point. It gives you vibes, but unlike you're never... This is a very... It'll sound strange when I say it now, but this is way more wholesome than you.
Yeah.
Eventually, when it gets to come around, because while this lifestyle, this proclivity is very taboo to someone like you or I, it is just, we're not ones to kink shame on here.
Yeah. Two consenting adults, they do, so it's perfectly okay.
As long as no one's getting hurt, then do what y'all want.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's also really about this guy coming to terms with who he is as a person through this dynamic with Margaret Qualley. And I thought it did that in a really fascinating way. And it has two of my favorite performances of the year. And I think Margaret Qualley really deserves at least a nod for Best Actress, because this performance is absolutely incredible.
Yeah. And Jim Place, how's it going there, man? He was just streaming, by the way. A shame I couldn't raid you. How's it going? Glad for you to stop by. Dusk, what is your thoughts on Sanctuary?
Yeah, I found both the performances to be very good, especially Mark Qualley, who honestly, if she doesn't get some kind of nod, that's just cheating. She does a fantastic job just switching back and forth almost on a dime between many different emotions, and you're never quite sure where there's a line. You're never quite sure where the line is. I think that's what makes this movie so twisted, but also quite interesting. Is even when a word is said or safe word is said, you're never quite sure. Oh, did you really mean that? but then they keep pushing, and you're never quite sure. And I think Christopher Abbott also gives a very good performance as well, as playing a guy who wants to push back against this, but is getting constantly excited by this dynamic. But even he, at the same time, has knee-jerk reactions of, no, we need to put a stop to this, or I shouldn't be feeling this way. And in a weird way, it's him trying to figure out, and her at the same time, what their dynamic really is. There is personal feelings here, and neither one are quite sure on how to do it. And it's really twisted, really interesting. This movie reminds me quite a lot of the Maggie Gyllenhaal movie, The Secretary.
Okay. Yeah, that's actually a good comparison. And the director, Zachary Wiggin, he actually listed that as one of his influences for this.
Yeah, I can definitely see that then. That one is a probably up to that point had been one of the best or strangest matching of what like a dominatrix and a subs kind of relationship to an extreme degree. What it kind of almost in a weird way feels like. I think in a lot of tone, a lot of ways that this is kind of set up gave me a lot of the Secretary vibes. And it's been a long time since I've seen even a movie even try and be that, because the Secretary was a strange movie even when it came out. And I can definitely see its influence on this one, but this one mixes up a bit more. While the Secretary was more of a like twist on a romantic comedy or a romance thriller, this one is a bit more thriller in its pacings, and I think that makes all the difference in the back and forth and where it kind of goes. And I want to be vague. I usually go into more detail, but I want you to experience it firsthand.
I want to be as vague as possible, but this movie dances between different genres, kind of in the same way that this dynamic dances in between who has the power in it.
Yeah. It honestly, to best describe it, it's basically about two people in a battle of struggling for power in a relationship, if there even is one to begin with.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a weird cocktail mix, and then they don't know what's going to happen, and it's tense but also exciting for them, and also super dangerous.
Yeah. And it's just them. That's all it is. That's all. Yeah. Just see them.
Yeah, because this had its premiere at TIFF in 2022, and I think this was a COVID production. And you can kind of see that because it has such a small cast. They are just in this one location.
Yeah. So yeah, you just will see Christopher Abbott and you just will see Margaret Qualley in it, and just in this one room, in this one place. You'll see a hallway, you'll see an elevator. That's pretty much pretty much it. But yeah, so I think it's always a true testament, to actors and to a director and writer. Yeah. If you can do a movie in one location with just kind of one set of characters and still make that very interesting, that shows you're doing a really good job. And I think, thank you, Javon Good. Thank you for the 50 bits. Much appreciated, man. Thanks for stopping by as always.
My guy.
Yeah, thank you. And it's always great when you can be able to do that and make that very interesting. And I think this movie is very interesting. And like I said, trying to figure out where it's going to go, watching the movie for yourself and trying to figure out that. The great performance by Margaret Qualley as Rebecca here is fantastic. How she kind of very much switches up her personality in a lot of different ways. Especially when you first see her, and you're trying to figure out who is this woman to him. Then when that gets revealed, there's a different shift there, where they're just eating together, and then that creates a different dynamic. And then afterwards, and then trying to figure out what her true motivations and motives are is also very interesting in the movie. And then Christopher Abbott also does a good job of this guy, of the type of guy that would be in this type of relationship, in this type of dynamic, and what kind of motivates a person like that to seek out something like this, I think is also very interesting. And the psychology of that is also very interesting. It's very nice. So I think, I haven't seen Margaret Qualley in much. I mean, she's kind of building her resume. I know she was in Once Upon a Time, but that was like a super small role.
Yeah. She was in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but that was a really small role. She was in The Nice Guys as the subject of their investigation, and she was also in the Death Note remake, which that I really dislike that movie, but I kind of liked her performance in it. And she was also recently in this Netflix miniseries called Maid, which I didn't see, but she got an Emmy nomination for a Golden Globe nomination for a best actress in a limited series.
Yeah. And I know she's going to be in like a Coen Brothers movie coming out this year.
Perfect.
So yeah, so very nice. So yeah, she's building her resume very nicely, so that's pretty good. So yeah, I thought she was fantastic in it. Yeah, I think this is a good psychological thriller that you can watch and be fascinated by. And Jim Blaze's the Death Note live action. Yeah, I don't like
think
that.
The world has forgotten about that.
Yeah,
the world is better off.
Yeah,
forgetting.
It's not the first though. Japan made like a bunch of live action Death Note movies.
Oh yeah, that is very true. But yeah, I had a great time watching it. I'm glad I watched it. Thank you, Nick, for talking about this movie as far as being your best of 2023 so far. So for me, I would give it a strong tune in for me. Very much enjoyed it. Any weak elements really for you guys with this movie at all?
The only real weak element is because the movie is so short. Because I think with credits, this only clocks in at about 82 minutes. And I could have watched like another 20 minutes of this dynamic playing out.
You wanted the movie to edge you some more, huh? Yeah, interesting. What about you, Dusk? Any negatives?
Certain avenues this movie goes into, I wish could have had a bit more meat to it. A little bit more focus on some of the elements that they kind of dive in, but then they move on to a different part of the dynamic it's a push and pull movie. And so I could have had just a bit more time in one of the pulls and back around. But I think overall its strength does come from its levity in being a cool 83 minutes. I think if you push more into it, it would lose that dynamic and that levity. And I think that's what ultimately allows it to kind of take the chances it does in these performances back and forth, and the twists that they throws here and there to spice things up.
Yeah. What will be your rating there, Dusk?
Well, it's been a bit. I mean, what a landmark for 2023. The last Bottleneck movie I saw was Reality, and that was pretty strong too. But I'd say for this type of movie and the way it was executed, Bottleneck movies are notoriously difficult to do. It relies so heavily on the script and the actors because you have nothing else. It's just bare bones. And I think they both nail it, both in the director's presentation and in the camera work, as well as most of all the two performances between the two leads. And because of that, I would definitely have to give this a strong tune in just on that merit alone. I can't really give it too far better because at the end of the day, this is not quite my cup of tea. And I do think it has a small, improvements that could have made it better here and there. But I can't deny the performances and just the environment and the way they utilize both. So this is definitely a strong tune in.
Okay. All right. Nick, what about you? Rating?
I mean, this is right now that I think this movie is either sitting at number 5 or 6 on my best of the year list. This is a movie I went into very cold. I just knew it had Margaret Qualley and it had Christopher Abbott, who he was an actor I really liked when I saw Possessor. And I went in completely cold, which I think is the way to go with this movie. And I just really felt just enthralled by this constantly shifting character dynamic between both Margaret Qualley and Chris Abbott. And like you were saying, a bottle film is notoriously difficult to pull off because it is entirely relying on your actors and entirely relying on your cinematography in this very limited space, which the cinematographer on this was Ludovica Isidori, and she manages to both make this small space, widen up and make it feel claustrophobic as the character dynamic shift. I gave it a very high peak. I absolutely loved this movie.
Wow.
And something that I love about it is that even even because I've watched this movie twice now. I saw it in theaters and I rewatched it again when it dropped on Hulu. And I still don't have a solid answer of where their dynamic ends up.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the thing. It's like, what is this relationship? What is, you know what I mean? I think that's interesting to dissect that.
Yeah. And it's interesting to dissect how much of this is a genuine relationship between the two of them and how much of it is just their game.
Yeah. So yeah, that was Sanctuary.